One leaked text message. That's all it took to blow apart the life of the richest man alive. But here's the part the headlines always miss. It wasn't just Jeff Bezos who paid the price. Two women were at the heart of this betrayal. Lauren Sanchez, a television host, pilot, and mother who thought she'd found love, only to be betrayed by the one person who should have protected her most, her own brother. MacKenzie Scott, the loyal wife who co-built Amazon, stood by Jeff for 25 years and then walked away with $38 billion and a plan to give most of it away. This is the story of family betrayal, billion-dollar heartbreak, and how two women came out of the scandal that shook Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and Hollywood. Let's set the stage. Lauren Sanchez, glamorous, ambitious, and fearless, MacKenzie Scott. Not just Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, but one of the most quietly powerful women in modern history. Her loyalty and sacrifice were legendary. And when the betrayal became public, she proved she could be just as legendary on her own terms. And finally, the third character in this triangle, Michael Sánchez, Lauren's brother. According to multiple investigations, he was the alleged source who sold his own sister's private messages to the National Enquirer for roughly $200,000. Those are our players. Now let's rewind, because before the scandal broke, this was a love story that looked picture perfect. Before the betrayal, before the tabloid covers, and before the infamous text message that set the internet on fire, there was a marriage that looked like the stuff of Silicon Valley legend. Back in the early 90s, Jeff Bezos was not a billionaire. He was a Wall Street analyst with wild dreams, and the woman who believed in those dreams was MacKenzie Scott. The two met at a hedge fund in New York, and according to Jeff himself, he was instantly captivated by her intelligence. Within months, they were engaged, and by 1993, they were married. What most people don't realize is that MacKenzie was not just Jeff's wife. She was his co-founder. She typed the original Amazon business plan, helped convince the first investors to hand over their cash, and worked side by side with Jeff when Amazon was nothing more than a half-baked idea in a Seattle garage. While Jeff obsessed over logistics and algorithms, MacKenzie was packing boxes, answering customer emails, negotiating with suppliers, and building desks out of cheap doors. She was there when the company went public. She was there when it broke through $1 trillion valuation, and she was there every night Jeff came home too tired to notice that she was slowly losing her own identity in the shadow of his empire. That loneliness set the stage for the scandal that was about to unfold. Because in 2016, another woman entered Jeff's orbit. Her name was Lauren Sanchez. Lauren wasn't just another pretty face in Los Angeles. She was a television personality, a helicopter pilot, and a woman who had built a career in a cutthroat industry. She was also married, raising 3 children, and by all appearances living a picture-perfect life with her husband, Hollywood power agent Patrick Whitesell. But when Lauren met Jeff at a party, something ignited between them. For almost a year, their romance remained a secret. They flew to remote estates, checked into luxury hotels, exchanged texts so intimate they read like diary entries. And this is where the story takes its fatal turn. Because those messages, those passionate lines like, "I will show you with my body, my lips, and my eyes very soon," became the very weapon that would unravel everything. Jeff thought he was writing to a lover in confidence. He never imagined that Lauren's own brother would be the one to turn those private words into tabloid gold. The scandal didn't explode overnight. It built like a storm, with whispers first, and then a sudden thunderclap. On January 9th, 2019, Jeff and MacKenzie released a joint statement announcing they were separating after 25 years of marriage. It sounded polite, even dignified. They said they would remain friends and continue co-parenting their 4 children. But just 2 days later, the National Enquirer dropped a bombshell that shattered the illusion. The Enquirer published an explosive exposé detailing Jeff's affair with Lauren Sanchez. The story included photos, travel details, and most damning of all, the private text messages between Jeff and Lauren. Suddenly, the richest man in the world was being dragged across every front page, not as a business visionary, but as a cheating husband caught sexting. But the scandal wasn't just humiliating for Jeff. It was devastating for Lauren. Imagine finding out that your own brother had allegedly betrayed you, had taken the most private, vulnerable parts of your life and sold them to a tabloid. According to multiple investigations, Michael Sánchez, Lauren's older brother, struck a deal with the National Enquirer to hand over the texts in exchange for around $200,000. Lauren later admitted she was blindsided. She had confided in her brother, trusted him more than anyone, and never imagined he would use her secrets as currency. For MacKenzie, the betrayal was of a different kind. She had given her entire adult life to Jeff, raised their children, and stood by him through every impossible goal. Now she was being forced to read her husband's most intimate words splashed across tabloid pages. Hours before the Enquirer's story broke, Jeff had confessed the affair to her. The fallout was immediate. Amazon stock dipped, investors panicked, and for once, Jeff Bezos wasn't the one in control of the narrative. And for the women caught in the blast radius, it was even more personal. For Lauren, it was humiliation. For MacKenzie, it was heartbreak. For both, it was the realization that the world would now define them by Jeff's scandal instead of their own achievements. But the scandal was only beginning. If you thought the humiliation would silence Jeff Bezos, you'd be wrong. Just a few weeks after the scandal broke, Jeff did something no billionaire had ever dared to do. He logged on, opened his laptop, and published a blog post that shook the media world. The title? No thank you, Mr. Pecker. It was a direct shot at David Pecker, the publisher of the National Enquirer. In the post, Jeff accused the tabloid of extortion and blackmail. He revealed that American Media Incorporated, the parent company of the Enquirer, had threatened to publish even more of his private messages and intimate photos unless he made a deal. Jeff refused, and instead of caving, he went nuclear. He exposed their tactics to the world. This move reframed the scandal. Suddenly, Jeff wasn't just a billionaire caught sexting. He was a billionaire standing up against tabloid blackmail. But here's where the female-first lens matters. Because in Jeff's attempt to flip the script, Lauren Sánchez once again got dragged through the mud. The same photos and messages the Enquirer was dangling over Jeff's head were hers too. She didn't get to write a blog post. She didn't get to control the narrative. For Lauren, this was a nightmare that kept replaying in headlines, each new twist another invasion of her privacy. And while Jeff may have gained points for fighting back, MacKenzie Scott remained silent. That silence spoke volumes. The divorce between Jeff and MacKenzie wasn't just any breakup. It was the most expensive divorce in history. And it all came down to one fact that seemed trivial back in 1993, but meant everything in 2019. Jeff and MacKenzie had never signed a prenup. When the Enquirer story hit, legal experts immediately calculated the stakes. By law, MacKenzie was entitled to half of the assets accumulated during the marriage, and that included Amazon stock worth over $75 billion. What followed were months of intense negotiations. Lawyers worked around the clock, not just to divide property, but to protect Amazon's stability. But here's where MacKenzie showed her power. She wasn't out for revenge. She wasn't trying to destroy Jeff or Amazon. Instead, she agreed to a settlement that gave her about 4% of Amazon shares, valued at around $38 billion. She signed away voting control of her stock, ensuring Jeff remained in charge of the company, but she walked away with enough wealth to instantly make her one of the richest women alive. And here's the velvet gossip twist. MacKenzie didn't hoard that money. Unlike so many billionaires who cling to their fortunes, she began giving it away at record speed. In the year since the divorce, MacKenzie has donated nearly $20 billion to charity, focusing on education, racial equity, healthcare, and women's empowerment. She created a platform called Yield Giving, flipping the philanthropy game by letting organizations apply directly for funds, with minimal bureaucracy and no strings attached. Compare that to Jeff's post-scandal path, obsessing over rockets, yachts, and a $50 million wedding to Lauren. The contrast is sharp, and the public noticed. One ex-wife built a new empire of generosity, while the ex-husband clung to a legacy scarred by sexts and scandal. But the divorce wasn't just about MacKenzie's future. It was also about Lauren Sanchez's reality. Because while MacKenzie became the poster child for dignity and purpose, Lauren found herself permanently attached to the tabloid version of her story. So what happened after the dust settled? After the texts, the tabloid, the $38 billion divorce? The answer is a tale of two women whose lives could not have gone in more different directions. Let's start with Lauren Sánchez. For her, the scandal never really ended. Once the Inquirer ran the story, her life became a public circus. She left her journalism career, not because she wasn't capable, but because her credibility was shredded. Every time she tried to step back into the spotlight, the narrative wasn't about her work. It was about the scandal. It was about her relationship with Jeff Bezos. And most painfully, it was about the betrayal by her own brother. Lauren reportedly told friends she felt devastated, not just by the exposure, but by the realization that her brother Michael had sold her out. And it wasn't only her reputation that paid the price. Her personal brand, once tied to ambition and achievement, became synonymous with scandal. And yet, Lauren didn't disappear. She leaned into a relationship with Jeff, standing by him through public mockery and criticism. Today, she's set to marry him in a lavish ceremony aboard his $500 million yacht. For Lauren, surviving the scandal became her career. Now compare that to MacKenzie Scott. For MacKenzie, the divorce was not an ending. It was a beginning. Instead of being defined as the billionaire's ex, she carved out her own legacy. In less than 5 years, she became one of the most influential philanthropists in the world. She gave billions to underfunded schools, women's shelters, food banks, and community health clinics. And she did it with a style that was the exact opposite of her ex-husband. Her approach even changed the way philanthropy works. She gave unrestricted grants, trusting local leaders to know best. She sped up the process, cutting years of bureaucracy into a matter of months. And she didn't demand recognition. MacKenzie even found love again, remarrying a schoolteacher. She traded life with the world's richest man for life with a man whose net worth you couldn't even Google. 2 women, 1 scandal. One overshadowed by betrayal, the other rising from heartbreak to rewrite what it means to hold wealth and power. So, what's the lesson in this billion-dollar soap opera? Because, make no mistake, it is a soap opera. Only this time, the cast includes the richest man alive, a betrayed sister, and a wife who became the most powerful philanthropist of her generation. The first lesson is family betrayal cuts deeper than any affair. Lauren may have been mocked for her relationship with Jeff, but the true wound came from her own blood. Michael Sánchez didn't just leak a text. He sold his sister's trust for a check that barely covered a down payment in Beverly Hills. Family can be the weakest link in any empire, and Lauren's story proves it. The second lesson is about control of the narrative. Jeff fought back with his famous blog post, but for all his wealth, all his power, the women in his life had no such outlet. Lauren endured the ridicule in silence. MacKenzie refused to play the media's game. In the end, it wasn't words but actions that spoke loudest. MacKenzie's giving shifted her reputation from scorned wife to icon of generosity. She didn't just reclaim her narrative, she rewrote it entirely. And the third lesson is this: money exposes character. Jeff, the richest man alive, was nearly undone by his own ego and desire. Michael, desperate for relevance, cashed in on his own sister. But MacKenzie showed that wealth doesn't have to corrupt. It can heal, empower, and uplift millions. She walked away from the same scandal with more dignity than anyone else involved. So, here's the velvet verdict. Lauren Sanchez will always be remembered as the woman betrayed by her brother, but she also represents survival. She took humiliation and turned it into endurance. MacKenzie Scott, on the other hand, emerged as the real winner. Not because of the $38 billion settlement, but because of what she did with it. While Jeff built rockets and yachts, MacKenzie built a legacy of generosity that will outlast them all. In the court of public opinion, she didn't just win the divorce. She won the future. This is Velvet Gossip, and that was the scandal behind the world's most expensive divorce.